Okay, the knives are out of the oven now. They're all tempered. The only thing I've done since is I've taken some sandpaper and I've just cleaned up the area where I quenched. So I just wanted to see that good temper line, all the scale broken. That's a pretty good indication that it hardened. You take a file if you want, just run it over. It's not catching, it's not really scratching, it's pretty solid. On the same line, you want your temper to be good enough so that your knife isn't going to break. You know, it's the happy medium. You want it hard, but you don't want it so hard that it's brittle. So the next step, before I go any further, is just to make sure they didn't warp up on me during heat treat. So I'll just put it on a straight edge and just make sure that they're all good and straight. And they all seem to be pretty straight. I've made up a set of rods that I use to straighten if they are crooked. The short one will go in the middle of the vise, the other two will go on the outside. So all you do is you just set them in there like that, and if one of these knives were crooked, you just put it in there, tighten it up, and you can tighten that up and bend it and straighten your knife out using those rods. And all they are, they're just a copper rod, and I've drilled a hole in, put a brass rod through it so that it'll hang on the vise. And that's all I use. But these are all looking good, so I'll put them back. We don't need them. Actually, I thought before I go on I'd show these a little better. They're actually a pretty good tool. They're a pretty good jig. It's just a copper rod. I mean, it could be brass, it could be steel, it could be anything. I like the copper because it doesn't mar the knife. And they just go into the vise. Two of them have a long rod, long copper rod, and the third one has a shorter rod. And that's just so it can ride in the middle and not hit the screw. And that's really all I use to straighten my knives. It works very, very well. I said you just slide the knife in here. This is going to be hard to do with the camera in the hand, but you would just slide the knife in there and tighten it up, and you can apply as much or as little pressure as you need to get it to come out the way you need it to. And I'll clean the knives up. Now I've got 220 grit belts on all my sanders. So the next step is going to be to clean up all of the deep scratches and to get all the scale off of it. And then we'll go from there. Okay, back to the gloves, back to the respirator. Got that bucket of water still right here. I'm going to keep that real handy this time. I'm going to use that a lot, because now that they're heat treated, I don't want to wreck the temper. I don't want those knives to get hot at all. So I'm just going to see if I can get the heavy scratches out with the 220, and then I'll explain what I do from there. So the knives are all sanded down now to 220 grit. I've got all the hard scratches that were from the 60 grit that I made the knives with, that I profiled and beveled them with. Got all those scratches out. There's still a little bit back in the handle. I'm not so concerned about that. I want this a little bit rough anyways so that the epoxy will grab to it good. But from about here forward, you can almost see the line. They're forward. They're very clean. Now I've got the 3 knives. I'm going to do 3 different finishes on them. The clip point is going to have a maple handle, and I have some nice looking lighter colored curly maple. So I think I'm going to put a blued finish on this. I'm just going to use a cold blue, like a gun blue, on this blade. And I'm going to do that step after I fit the handle to it. And only because when I sand around through the handle on the back, when I get that fit tight, at some point I'm going to hit it with a sandpaper, and I'm going to end up taking the blue off anyways. So with the stabilized wood, I've never had a problem with the chemical go into the wood. So I'm going to do that step after the knife is fitted with the handle. So the only thing that's left to do to this one now before I put a handle on it is I'm going to bring it up to 320 grit just to get all of the scratches that will be seen through the blue out of it. So that's what that knife is going to be. This one here, I'm going to put a mirror finish on it. So again, I'm up to 220 grit. From 220 grit, the way I mirror finish, I use these Norton belts right here, and the grays, the whites. The Norton belts with these, the ones that I mirror finish, the grit is actually measured in microns. It's not like traditional sandpaper where it's 400 grit, 800 grit. These are, let's see if I can find it on one somewhere. These are an X45. I have X100, and I'll work them from X100 through X65, then 45, then 15, and then 5. And when I'm done with the 5, they'll have a pretty good shine to them. And from there, they'll go to the buffers, and I'll clean them up the rest of the way. But I won't buff them until after I fit the handle to them, because I don't want any of that wax to get in between the steel and the handle material. So for now, I'm just going to get them sanded. Now, because I use 2 different machines when I do my grinding and my sanding, what I'll do is I will start with my Grizzly, because I'll do the flat parts, and I'll work them right up from X100 all the way to X5, just doing the flats, the sides, the top of the blade. And then I'll come over to my contact wheel, and I'll work the bevels in the same way. And I'll start with the X100, I'll work my way all the way up to the X5 on the bevels. Now when you're bringing them up, it's really important that you keep the heat off. Those fine belts like to make heat. They'll get that knife hot, and they can ruin your temper. So I will dunk them a lot in the water, almost every pass. I'll use a very light pressure, and I'll dunk them often. Now the problem with doing that, though, is those Norton belts really don't like the water. This is an older belt. So it's really important that you dry them off after you've dunked them. You want them really dry. You don't want that water on that belt much at all. The third knife I'm going to put a hand finish on. I like the looks of a hand finish. It's a little more work than the other 2, but it'll come out as good or as bad as you want it to, because there's no machining errors involved. It's just a matter of working it until all the scratches are gone. But I'll probably have 3 times the amount of work and time in this knife as I'll have in both of the other 2. But my setup for doing a hand finish is I have a small vise that's actually mounted the other way. Then I lock into my larger vise that's mounted to the bench. So that gives me a horizontal work platform. I have a piece of hardwood and the knife locked into that platform. And that's pretty solid. It's locked in there pretty good. So now I have 2 tools that I made that I use. It's just a little block mahogany with a piece of leather epoxy to it. It has a hole in it, but that's really just so I can hang it out of my way when I'm not using it. What I'll do is I'll take the sandpaper. I'm trying to do this one-handed, but I'll put it on there with the leather side. That leather will work just to cushion it a little bit, and I'll work my way through the sides of the knife until I've got all the scratches out from the grip before it. And I'll work from 220 to 320 to 400 and then to 600. And sometimes I'll go to 1,000, although I'll probably just stop at 600 with this one. Now for the bevels, I have a piece of a contact wheel. I just cut a chunk of it out. I've got a square on one side and it tapers off to the other. And I'll do the same thing. I'll put sandpaper in that, and I'm not going to do it because it's kind of hard with one hand on this. But I'll ride that right into the bevel, right tight to that line, and I'll work that the same way so that I have all of the scratches out. And again, work it right through from one grit all the way up through until you've removed the previous grit's marks. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'm going to have quite a bit of time into this, so I don't think I'm going to show the steps. I've explained them, and I think that I'll just get to work on these knives without the camera, and for the next part of this build-up of these knives, we'll be working on the handle. So I'm going to start getting these all ready, and the next section we do will be fitting the handles to them.